Is the decapitation of Iran about ending its nuclear program, or is it about China and the future of the dollar as reserve currency? In case you spent the weekend touching grass, Saturday morning Donald Trump bombed Iran, apparently wiping out the leadership who were helpfully having a giant staff meeting for their monthly TPS reports. Now, Trump hopes this sets off a scramble for power. Critics call it bomb and pray, with candidates including the deposed prince, a military junta, or low-echelon regime officials who might have very short life expectancies. But what happens in Iran does not stay in Iran, because of the millions of barrels of oil Iran was exporting, 90% of which was going to China. Even higher than the 70% of Venezuela oil that was going to China. And none of it was being paid in US dollars, since both Venezuela and Iran are sanctioned on the SWIFT dollar payment system. Now, this is raising questions whether Iran was actually a strategic strike against China, who's already reeling from a real estate crisis and massive overcapacity in manufacturing, which is exacerbated by Trump's trade war. The background is China has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Ukraine war, gobbling up Russian oil and gas that used to go to Europe and getting it at a fat discount since it is sanctioned. This turned Russia into China's biggest oil and gas provider, and China now buys nearly half of Russian oil, which is about double its pre-war share. China was doing the same with Iran and Venezuela, buying their sanctioned oil at a fat discount, essentially buying shoplifted groceries on the street instead of going into Walmart and paying like everybody else, which gave it a big cost advantage. For scale, 25% of China's pre-war oil imports came from Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. That's risen to 40%, of which half were Venezuela and Iran. Now, the last time America strangled oil on an Asian country, it led to Pearl Harbor. That was 1940s Japan, which was forced to either walk away from its China invasion or seize oil-rich European colonies. Today, the most likely outcome is China has to outbid the other half of Russian oil, most of which today is going to India, which also re-exports a hefty chunk black market to Europe. Almost all of this oil is by ship from the Arctic since Ukraine bombed Russia's oil pipelines, meaning it is very easy to switch. So China loses its cheap oil, India and Europe will have to scramble for supply, perhaps they'll even buy American. There's a final D to the 3D chess saying Iran was not about mullahs, it was not about China, it was about the petrodollar. The idea that the U.S. punishes countries who don't price oil in dollars to defend the dollar as reserve currency, which allows $38 trillion in debt. There's an entire industry blaming U.S. wars on petrodollar defense. Essentially, when a regime stops pricing oil in dollars, his days are numbered. Trump knocking out the two biggest non-dollar oil exporters would be right on cue. So it's next brought to you by I Trust Capital. In a single morning, Trump took away China's cheap oil. He may force India and Europe to buy American, and if the petrodollar was part of the deal, it means Trump's gone from wanting a weak dollar to promote exports to wanting a strong dollar to finance trillion-dollar federal deficits. Listen to all last week's videos in a single 20-minute podcast. Search Peter St. Onge wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.